I heard a quote that reminded me of this podcast, and it said something like, "Smart people learn from their life lessons, where geniuses learn from other people's life lessons." And I feel like this podcast, with all these leaders that come on and are so gracious to share their experiences, you can learn from their experiences and life lessons and pick up some things.
Welcome to Tech Talent Today, where IT leaders share their tough challenges, creative solutions, and latest insights. You'll discover fresh ideas and inspiration here with your host, IT staffing veteran and president of Clearmont Technologies, Jodi Kulek Mayer. And now, here's Jodi.
Welcome to Tech Talent Today. I'm your host, Jodi Kulek Mayer. In this episode, I'm doing something a little different. July is the one-year anniversary of Tech Talent Today. I started Tech Talent Today during the pandemic as a way for people to learn and get ideas from each other's journey. I thought it'd be fun to look back on the past year and discuss some of the things that resonated with me and our listeners. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Bonnie Brill. She works at Clearmont Technologies and also has extensive experience in the IT staffing industry. You may have seen Bonnie on our Interviewing for Zoom video, which gives helpful tips when doing a video interview. She's helping me on this look back on the past year of great podcast guests and episodes. Hi, Bonnie. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Jodi. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. I can't believe it's been 1 year since you started the podcast. That went so fast.
Right? For me, too.
Maybe 2020 didn't go so fast, but the podcast year went fast.
Right. 2021, right? Faster.
Exactly.
So after 1 year of episodes, what stands out to you about the episodes of Tech Talent Today?
Well, when you first started the podcast and you were bringing on all these brilliant industry leaders, I thought we were really going to get a lot of technical information and, mostly all work-related stuff. And that's great. But what I was so pleasantly surprised is how these people, I know it sounds funny, but they're real people with real problems and how they solve them. And I found that it seems like everyone has a story, and it could be it just affects our lives, not just the workplace. And I've got a lot of wisdom from all your guests.
That's great. Thank you. I agree. People's, it's not just their work life, your work life and your personal life. I guess that makes up your entire life. Right.
It's so true. And I think that some of the problems and how they solved them, even a work problem, could translate. And I found that really interesting. And everybody's so different, but we all have similar problems in our life.
That's true. One episode that really resonated with a lot of people was Juliet Sampson's journey to becoming CIO and having to find a kidney for her daughter while she's working. That's episode 1. And I love Juliet's comment about how she's going along, trying to achieve her goal, and here comes a curveball. Listen to what she said.
This was very interesting, again, in terms of what happened to me personally, but I'm trying to kind of draw parallels in terms of how things happen. So as I mentioned to you, I had a career goal. And even though you write down your goal, you can never get from point A to point B directly. There's always going to be curveball.
I think her comment was interesting because you're going along, following your goals, and then things happen out of your control.
Absolutely. And Juliet was an amazing interview. And it's so true. Everyone says you have a plan, and then all of a sudden a curveball hits you and you have to completely readjust. I think Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Right.
So, you just have to become flexible and realize another way to get to your goal, or sometimes just readjust them. And I thought that she really pointed that out, and she was able to switch to another industry that was similar. Pretty motivating and inspiring how she handled everything with her daughter. That was just a great interview.
I agree. And also, a lot of people are interested in changing industries. So it's helpful to hear how she approached it. And a lot of times just hearing that somebody else did it can give you the confidence that you can do it too.
Also, I think it helps create a blueprint where she said, well, what's similar to what I've already done? So she has some of these transferable skills that she can put to another industry, but still be something that's different. So she noticed that it was shrinking, and she sort of saw the handwriting on the wall and decided to make a change. But sometimes, even if you don't see the handwriting on the wall and there is none, you just want to change something. It's not like, back in the day where you stay with the same job for 50 years and get a gold watch. It seems like now people want to have some different challenges.
That's true. That's true. I think everybody, which this is sort of unusual, like a curveball was thrown to everybody with the pandemic. Even though, like, I'm so sick of talking about the pandemic. I wish we could stop talking about it.
I know, we hate it.
But when is the time that everybody is like thrown the same curveball? I mean, it did not affect everyone in the same way. So that's what made it really challenging. But that it existed for everyone.
So true. And our whole model of how we did things had to change, whether it was from work, your child's school, personal things, the way we shopped. It felt like the entire world was thrown a curveball. But I think, overall, we really, people adjusted how we all worked remotely from home, and even school, how they started working with hybrid situations, and you had to sort of move with it. You didn't really have a choice.
Right. Yes. I think a lot of executives in companies really didn't want everybody working from home, but it had to happen and function to move business forward.
Yes, it's true. And now that things have opened up for the most part, I find people are sort of struggling with, do we stay home? Do we go back to the office? Do we do some kind of hybrid? So I don't know. What have you been seeing? What have your clients been saying? What have you been seeing in that area?
Well, clients have been handling it differently. There are some that are wanting people to come back on a hybrid situation where they're on site 3 days a week and can work remotely 2 days a week. When recruiting for those clients, it is a little bit more challenging because right now it is a candidate marketplace. I am getting a lot of pushback from the candidates that's not their first choice. Not for everybody, but it does seem for the majority. There's people who went to the office the whole time, during the pandemic, even when most people stayed home because that's how they worked the best.
Right. No, that makes sense. I find that, a lot of people did enjoy this working from home portion. There are some, I've heard mixed situations. There are some people that feel a little more like lonely just working from home, or, you don't have the sociability that you have in the office, or the ability to be noticed, by others for some of your achievements when you're just not there. So it's true. It's a mixed bag. It's hard to find the right balance.
That's so true. I think also one of the podcasts with Kate Horseman from Manager Tools about is working remotely, holding back your career. That was a popular podcast as well. Kate's view was, especially if you're a manager, that you need to go back to the office and interact with your people. And, that's the best way to move forward.
I remember, in Kate's interview that she had mentioned something about that. As people are coming back into the office as a manager, it's time to sit down with them and, reestablish your relationships. So I remember that was really interesting. All business is personal, they say, and she feels like you need to get that rapport back since you've been away for so long. So that was a good portion.
Right. I agree. And, I've also been wondering for companies that are not coming back, the young people joining their firm, how are they going to get acclimated and find a mentor? Because as you said, all relationships are personal. How are they going to build those personal relationships? I guess it's harder to do that over video interviewing, and even a lot of companies did happy hours and painting online and all different things. I don't know if it's the same as in person.
Yeah, I agree. It's not the same. You need to really go and develop those relationships, especially as a new young person fresh out of college. I remember, starting my first position and having those mentors was amazing because I could see everything that they did, how they handled themselves. You could go out to lunch and pick their brain. It really was helpful. And that is a missing component. While I love the remote idea, and that was one positive thing, if you could say that actually came out of the pandemic, if I'm allowed to say that without getting a lot of hate. But I do feel like that type of connection and mentorship is something that does lack when you don't get to go in.
That is true. Though, I guess for a lot of moms and probably dads, it was helpful to be at home, especially if your child was going to school from home as well, to be able to handle the different aspects of your life better. Or if you're a caregiver, like sandwiched in the middle with you're taking care of your parents and your children, the remote work really can work for some people.
Definitely. It provides so much more flexibility, no time on commuting. You could save on your dry cleaning or whatever you need to do. But again, like everything that has, the double-edged sword, that you also have your young child walking in on you. Like we all saw that hilarious clip on YouTube of that guy who was talking in a very important business meeting and his little kid comes running into the scene and, it didn't look overly professional, although I think people mostly understand. But again, like everything else, there's got a pro and a con, not to mention you feel like you're always on call.
Right. You don't turn off.
Right. You don't turn off. Your office is in your home.
Right. Yes. Sal Campanier also spoke about this with me. I don't know if it ended up on the podcast, but she said it gave like a different view into your teammates' lives. You're seeing their house and hearing their children in the background. Their kids are practicing the piano and, everyone could hear it. So it gave a different view. And I guess it did make people feel closer in a way because you're seeing them as a whole person.
It's true. I call it the good, the bad, and the ugly. You can see a little bit of everything. I do love something. Since you mentioned Sal, I have to talk about something that Sal said that struck me so much. I think of it all the time. As a leader or anyone in an organization that has the appropriate seats for yourself, when you think of that comment of someone should do something about that, reflect on the point that you probably are that someone and you actually have the ability to do something about it. That struck me so much because I think we've all always said, someone should do something about that. Oftentimes, that person is you. I say this to my son after the Sal interview. Like, my son's like, something should be done. I said, you should do something about that. So, like I always say, a lot of wisdom comes from these podcast episodes.
Yes, absolutely. And like it's an accountability instead of like passing the buck that somebody should do something about this. You can make a difference, right?
You.
Yes.
It's absolutely you. I've thought of that so many times. That was a great statement.
Right. I was just speaking to one of our consultants on our team, and she was taking care of her mom, and she started a nonprofit based on a need that she noticed while she was taking care of her mom. And that's something we're going to promote because I really admire that. But I'll talk about that more, and we'll be letting people know about her nonprofit.
I love that. I mean, this is also an opportunity for not only to hear other people's stories, but for us to come together as a community and support each other. And I think this is a great forum to be able to do that.
Right. Completely.
A few other things. I don't know if just want to bring up some other particular. In fact, I have to say that I've been so impressed with these podcasts. If anybody has looked at our LinkedIn page, we started a podcast wisdom segment that we do put a lot of posting for because there's been so much good ideas that have happened. And something that I really like, I think it was a Jerry Gentry that had talked about too. I've thought of this also, how they were going to design Mercury and Apollo. And he said, how do you do that? You cannot start with we have to build a 3-stage rocket with all these electrical systems and stuff because it's just so overwhelming. But you start with a simple problem. He said, let's fix that. And now what's the next problem? And then what's the next one? And what's the next one? And then over time, they invented stuff that no one thought of before and got to the moon. And I love that because sometimes when a problem seems so overwhelming, you can't just look at the entire thing. You'll just never do it. But just like they say, how to eat an elephant one bite at a time. And I thought of that too in my life. When I have an overwhelming problem, I think of that particular statement and just handle it one situation at a time.
That was great wisdom from Jerry. It was a fabulous podcast. There was another podcast, episode 8, Staying Flexible in Your Career with Gary Boumé. That had a lot of great takeaways and resonated with so many people. I just can't believe how many people have talked to me about that podcast. Here, Gary's talking about making a move later in his career. Listen to what he says here.
I was doing a role that was new to me. I had been doing it for a couple of years. I think I did all I could in it. And I just thought maybe, it's time for a change. I'd been here at that company. I'd been there, like I mentioned, close to 11 years. I had done a number of roles. So I almost felt like I think I've done all the roles that I'm eligible to do here and qualified to do. So maybe it was time to just move on to another place where it would be a whole new set of challenges. So that's kind of the idea behind why I left. And to your point, you can't see me because this is a podcast, but my beard is fairly speckled with gray. So I've been around a while. And I thought, if I do want to make a move, I probably need to make it now because it would be harder and it would probably be my last move.
A lot of people this resonated for because they say, like, what do you look for when you're looking like for your last job? That like over your career, like what matters to you changes. And one person suggested that I even have a service to help people figure that out. And I said I would have to hire like psychologists. It's not really a recruiting thing, though I guess a recruiter can be a sounding board and sort of like a psychologist without the training.
That's true. I mean, I think wasn't there like a famous book, like What Color is My Parachute or something, where you could figure out like some of the things that matter to you and where you'd like to go in your career? I think Gary brings up such a good point, though, too, in general. I mean, how many people do you know that have second acts in life where they're first something either they are looking for a change or something beyond their control has changed and they need to have what they call a second act and sort of restart themselves, even, say at midlife or beyond, and do something totally different than they did for the first half of their life. I think that really resonated because more people than you think are sort of having to dip their toe into a second act type of situation. So, but change could be scary.
Yes, it's the unknown. But I think people who do well with like uncertainty and the unknown, that's also like a skill set that hiring managers are looking for. I can't believe like how many hiring managers say like, I need somebody who's comfortable with ambiguity or uncertainty. And that's a hard thing to interview for. But like in today's marketplace, like that's the skill set that people need. You can learn like a technical skill set, but I guess that skill set is, really a special one.
Yes. I mean, it's very difficult to become comfortable in the uncomfortable. And how do you do that, right? You have to be willing to take risks and, and try different things, but that's a tough one. Everybody likes to sort of be in their comfort zone and feel in a safety, but it's so true. I mean, I know I've heard that before where they're looking for people who have that particular, not a skill set, but almost like a personality trait.
Right. I don't even want to call it a skill. I don't know what to call it, but that's true. And that really shows like a trend that I'm noticing, that hiring managers are looking to see the authentic person. In episode 11, Be Your Own Chief People Officer with Adam Stanley, I loved his go-to question. You can listen to it here.
My first question for almost every interview is either what's your story or what matters to you? And the reason I ask those questions is typically the clearest way you can get to understand someone is to either walk in their office and see what's on their desk or to see how they respond to those kind of questions. Because if they respond with my story is I love problem solving and I live for tough, complex challenges, and I set big, hairy, audacious goals, I realize immediately that they're not being authentic because I don't think that's how they would answer those questions to their friends, to their families, to their loved ones.
I love what, Adam says about that. And it's funny. I don't know if the world maybe has caught on to that because I just saw a very funny commercial today. I guess it's meant to be somewhat funny about an advisory firm that not only is advising you about your financial situation in business, but also in your personal life. And the person was wearing an earpiece in their ear while they're interviewing, and the advisory firm is telling them what to say. And, they're saying, I don't have any hobbies and I love spreadsheets and I like to work 1,000,000 hours and I only want to do this for you. And that's not what I'm hearing in the hiring marketplace. People, I guess, want to know what makes you tick and what motivates you and how you solve problems. And I guess, right, if you're comfortable with the uncomfortable and not knowing. So I think that's an interesting trend.
That's so interesting. That's hilarious thinking about the commercial. I mean, don't we all wish that in some situations we had like a professional telling us what we should say? But it's true. I think they just want to know who you are. And sometimes that just sounds to us, they say canned and pitched, like you want to see who the person really is going to be, not who you're trying to just present for the interview or what you think that the interviewer would like to hear. You sort of have to let your own personality show through.
Yes, I agree.
I like how he says you have to be your own, people officer. I just thought that was very interesting, way to approach it.
Right. That you can't really rely on the HR department to develop your people. They can give you the resources you need. They're a wonderful resource to go to, but they're not responsible for developing your people. You are. So.
Again, right, all business is personal.
I mean, there's so many, themes that, relationships, and somebody should do something about that, and it's probably you.
Yes, that's so true. Curveballs, in life and also obviously in business. A lot of the same themes I think we all sort of struggle with. Another interesting episode that I thought was with Stefan Ott, where he talked about data. He was basically talking about how do you present data internally and externally and make it available for people to come up with their own conclusions based on the data. I think this is such an interesting point. I read something where it says that data will talk if you're willing to listen. And I know that it's such a hot topic right now, and I thought that was a really good point that he brought up.
Everyone, all of my clients want to do better with data, get access to their data, have clean data. It's a lot because data is siloed into a lot of companies, and it's very challenging to get to it. It seems like such a simple thing, like getting to good, clean data and having governance on your data. That is a lot of what people are talking about.
I mean, and how to present it. You have to present it in a way that will anybody can understand it and be able to draw the conclusions. I thought that was really well put.
Yes, I agree. So this has been a great look back of the past year for Tech Talent Today. And do you have any parting thoughts?
I just think it's such a great podcast. I heard a quote that reminded me of this podcast, and it said something like, smart people learn from their life lessons, where geniuses learn from other people's life lessons. And I feel like this podcast, with all these leaders that come on and are so gracious to share their experiences, you can learn from their experiences and life lessons and pick up some things. And it's made me such a smarter mother because I've been able to impart this wisdom on my son. And he wonders where I come up with all these gems. And as a teenager, you can imagine how well received that is. But I've really enjoyed it. And I can't wait to hear about what you have going to be going forward for the next year and the guests that are going to come on. I'm looking forward to it. It's been a great year.
Thank you. Yes, I really like it too. And I do love that the guests come on and they're so open and show their authentic selves and discuss the struggles and how they approach it and their journey. It's been so interesting. So I've really enjoyed our conversation talking about these past episodes, and I'm looking forward to learning more from the tech community in our next year.
Me too, Jodi. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to Tech Talent Today, brought to you by Clearmont Technologies IT Staffing and Search. You can find out more at clearmonttech.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and share. See you next time.